There's so much to dive into. As I peel back your story, and just for context for the wicked smart listeners, you interviewed one of our equity partners, who's an amazing individual, built one of the largest fitness brands, and then you chatted with my son-in-law Zach. So small world, and here we are.
That's it. Yeah, it's funny how it all connects, isn't it?
So your story, again, amazing. I'm gonna dive into different pieces of it, because I think that the mental piece, the struggle piece, the sacrifice, the success is super takeaways for our wicked smart listeners. So only because I wrestled with it in 08 and got beat up financially big time and had to dig out, I'd love to hear sort of I'm calling it the original, only because I only could research so much, but you were in debt over 100 grand, young,
Yeah.
and had to dig out. Can you just kind of talk about that a little bit? And I know there's nuances within that I want to peel back.
100%. Yeah. So when I was like in my kind of mid-20s, so 25 years old, I'm not sure, fell into the wrong circle, had very little education or understanding about anything that was truly meaningful to me in my life in terms of like what was important, values, those types of things. Had this weird narcissistic kind of self-fulfilling idea that I was better than everyone and I had to, go and buy everything and anything I can get my hands on to fulfill that prophecy of being some golden child, which was completely just so far from the truth. And so like all of the money or anything that I did make was just put back into cars, toys, clothes, impressing upon other people some image that I wanted to perceive. And ultimately, I didn't understand it. It was just coming from a place of, fear and lack internally. And that kind of wound me up into a place of, like you mentioned, 100, just under 150K of like just personal debt, massive drug addiction, where I was using drugs every day, and really, really broken. And I remember kind of, yeah, it still gives me chills like hectically, because it was only about 6 years ago. And I just remember like going through this whole period of my life and having like so much disparity between the person that I thought that I was internally and then this life that I was kind of living in my reality. Opened my eyes and I was like, this is fucking hell. I was like, I can't stand this. And so, yeah, I battled with it for years. And it was interesting because I was talking about this to some of my salespeople recently, where I was like, sometimes you've got to believe in the future being better than your current situation, and the certainty that you have in the future somehow being fucking better has got to kind of outweigh the pain and the fear and the suffering of the unknown change. And so for me, what really changed for me is I had this opportunity. I was kind of presented with this license kind of business model, franchisee kind of thing, program course that I had to invest and buy into, which actually eventually came to be my first business, which was a hail damage repair business. And so a couple of my friends were in the space, and I heard like rumors that they were making, great money, 6 figures a month. And I was like, I can't even comprehend that kind of money. I was like, I make $1,150 a week, and 80% of it goes to my loans and the bank. And then the other 20% I'm supposed to live on and pay rent and somehow keep my head above water. I was like, this is a mess. And so I remember starting to get into that whole circle a little bit and spoke to some people doing it, went in and looked at the facility where they train and the whole like little incubation thing that you had to go through. And I was like, this must be a scam. I was like, surely people are not here making 20, 30 grand a week. I'm like, I still can't believe it. And I spoke to more people, validated it further. And I remember like having this like very, very, very clear fork in the road where I was like, I'm in a situation where all I know is a construction job, $11.50 per week. In the next 12 years, because of the dumb decisions you've made, by the time I'm 37, you will be debt free and you'll be able to actually live your life. Alternatively, you've got this other complete road of unknown, which has no light at the end of the tunnel. You can't even see down that fucking road. However, there's this potential to earn, much, much, much more money than I'm currently doing. And I remember having this very, very like just candid conversation with my now wife, and I was like, I have to do this. And she was like, you're out of your mind. She's like, I can't put like you got no idea about business. You've never owned a business. You don't know what to do with those cars. You've never repaired a car before. You don't know anything about automotive. Like nothing. Like it's completely like I might as well go and start like learning Chinese. And I was like, I've got to fucking do it, because the last thing I want to be is 38, 45, 50 and be sitting there wound up and broken, being like, I wonder what that would have been like.
Yeah.
And so I called two of my buddies and I was like, I swear to God, if it's the last thing I do before I leave this earth, I'll pay you back this money. Just please lend me 25 G's to do this thing. So I went further into debt, borrowed this money, paid for this course program, mentorship kind of license situation. And I just went into that thing like it was my absolute last round on this planet. And I just had this absolute savage, like take no prisoners, like I'm burn the ships, everything. Because it was burn the ships, absolutely, in the truest form. And then very, very quickly, like in the first 12 months, I surpassed my earnings with my construction gig. And then the next 12 months, I think I kind of netted about like just shy of $1 million. And then in that kind of third year of business, it was like up to almost 3 million. So, and then I remember doing it, paying my debts off, paying every person back, being in that situation where I was like, holy shit, like a big F you to anyone and everyone that's ever doubted me. And a big F you to myself and the doubts that I had in myself. And I was
the
like,
old self, right?
never again. Yeah. I was like, the amount of belief that instilled in me to like say yes to me and believe in the potential future, despite the current situation not being favorable. That's kind of my, I guess, ethos based on that. Yeah. So
absolutely incredible, because a bunch of things. Well, we have a lot of common threads, even though we're different ages, but we went through the same crap, and then mentally had to go through the same crap. So here's a couple things, just for unpacking what you just said. So the person that makes several million is a different person that makes 1150 a week, just mentally on all fronts, right? So between that day and say, I'm going to go all the way forward to today, but how important was your exposure to different people, mentors, whoever it might be for you? How important was that? And do you remember pivotal times for that? And was that what got you through, or you just said, it doesn't matter, I'm going, and then you discovered people? I'm very curious.
Yeah, good question. So I think for me, what it was number one, like personally and subjectively for me, it was first like the commitment with knowing that I could never go back to what currently was the life situation that I was living. Like that was number one. And then kind of just throwing myself into this, completely new landscape. And it was more about, because of that obsession and that kind of like, and it was a very like fear, urgency. If I don't do this, I'm dead, it's not a healthy place to operate from. I don't believe long-term sustainably, but it's very, very powerful, like short-term. And so jumping into it, it was very much around that. So for me, it just by nature, by design, kind of put me in this like tunnel vision situation where, first of all, it became more about not seeing and cutting off, just not intentionally, all of the people that I was spending time with. Yeah. And so I think Alex Hormozy says something similar to this, where it's like we rise to the level of our constraints, not to the level of our potential. And that was kind of, for me, it was like, I'm in this situation where all of the people around me are just lemons and losers and druggos. And I've got to first cut them and sever that tie in order for me to allow space for, future potential. So that came first. And then from there, being able to future kind of elevate to different people, becoming mentored and coached by, Jordan Belfort and a few other phenomenal speakers, coaches, trainers, like some great people. That had to come first in order to enable me to step forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. So was it difficult, or maybe how difficult was it to, at that early stage, I'm still in that stage, and then I'll fast forward, to look far out, like when you had to restructure all your loans and that seemed far out? Like, was it depressing or frustrating to look that far out, or did you have to take it in bite sizes? Like my wife used to say, running, I just need to get to that street light and then I'll go to the next one, the next one. Did you chunk it, or talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, man. Like first things first, like I just, and it's like, I almost don't like telling the story of it, because I feel like it's the traditional, like, personal development-y thing of make your bed and all that kind of crap, which I really don't buy into. But for me, like what I started doing just initially was like, how about you just wake up on the same time as you say you'll wake up, and how about you just like make your bed first? And how about like today you just go and send one resume to one potential employer. And then from there, it was like, all right, how about you just like send 2 resumes to 2 employers? Like this is before I went into that hail thing. And it was a very, very gradual approach of like more so the small domino leading to the big domino rather than the big domino trying to tip that first leading to the small domino.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just what worked in terms of being able to gradually start to see some traction and momentum. And then once I had that, I was like, I'm addicted to this, and I'm not going to stop or let go of the direction or the kind of momentum that I've built. Yeah.
So let's fast forward, because I can do this for 4 hours, and talk about, you've got the Ecom Capital and of course your personal development company. Life today, how much time do you allocate to each one of those, if it's easy to kind of segregate? And which gets you most excited, or maybe they're both the same? I don't know. I'd just love to hear where your head is today.
100%. Yeah, definitely. So at the moment, so I have Ecom Capital, which is an e-commerce consulting and development company or firm where we help people start and grow e-commerce brands, like specifically focusing on branded products that people can build and launch and scale sustainably long term. And then outside of that, I have like you mentioned, personal development coaching and training company. And then as part of the Ecom Capital, I also have like 2 subsidiary companies that are just e-commerce brands that I personally own. And I have, shareholders in some of those as well, so that we can kind of grow those brands together. So I was reflecting on this, I think last week, and I was like, that's a lot. You know what I mean? I was like,
Sure is.
Damn. And yeah, juggling the time and being able to kind of like effectively dedicate your full attention to one specific thing while saying no to other specific things is like perpetually frustrating and difficult, and I think if I was to say what brings me the most happiness and fulfillment and like lights my heart up, I would say it's like the personal development, service to others, and being able to give back through that kind of vehicle. And if I was to say what challenges me, excites me, and I don't know, stretches the fabric of my entrepreneurial spirit, it would be like everything in terms of growing these businesses, exiting these businesses, and building, something fantastic that creates real value for the customer as well as for the future, acquisition potential of each business. So that challenges me and also lights me up and fulfills me. Yeah.
I love it. So along the way, like even if it was, whether it was way back then when you had the initial struggles, or now as you're kind of what I call stacking and scaling, do you ever wrestle with sort of that imposter syndrome still, or is that kind of behind you? Like, I don't know if I can do that, someone else can,
I think that it's necessary to wrestle with that all the time. And I think for me, it's a symbol, it's a reflection, it's a trigger that I am in a space that is new and foreign to where I have been prior to this right now. So that's kind of how I see it. And I think that if I don't know, struggle with or experience, or I don't have times where I'm like, oh, hey, there's that imposter syndrome. Like I'm not associating myself with a crowd big enough for me to feel uncomfortable or triggered. I remember specifically when I had kind of like grown my hail repair company, and I went, I had this very, very, very visceral experience where I was like, I need to start associating with bigger players. I got invited to this mastermind with Jordan Belfort over in the US. And I remember at the time in the circle that I was around in the hail space, I was like, I'm pretty good. I'm making great money. I've got some real estate under my belt. I've cleared all my debt. I'm living a great life. I'm like, this is good. And a lot of people around me were like, singing my praises and being like, Sasha, like, man, like, can you help me do this? And you're incredible. And you've done all these things. And I was like, okay, cool. And I had the interpretation that like something's wrong. I was like, I've got to do something to shift this, because I just had the understanding of like, I'm the biggest fish in this tiny freaking pool, and I've got to get myself out. And so I remember getting over there and getting into this room of like 10 other entrepreneurs and business leaders around the US, Europe, Canada, and they were all, you know, fast surpassing me in their annual revenue, some like 10 to 20 million, some 120 plus million. And I remember being in that room and just feeling like this little boy that had no idea, like I was an imposter. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. However, like what came from that was, you know, one of the most rapid and transformational growth periods of my, you know, business career and sales development career, because of the exposure to that and because of the association with that imposter syndrome. So absolutely necessary. I think it's more so how you kind of deal with it more than do you feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you it's like you welcome it. You can't wait till it happens type thing. It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah. Correct.
So when you
Absolutely.
left
I
that
mean,
room, this is interesting. So do you attribute all or most of that growth to simply the exposure and the bigger thinking? It wasn't like somebody gave you a new technique, right?
no, no, absolutely not. I think a couple of different things: exposure to bigger players that see something in me that I don't yet see in myself,
Mm,
and being able to borrow from some of their certainty that they have in me, buy into that, and back that with an incredible amount of execution and action. And that kind of combination, I find, seems to really shortcut the time or learning process or kind of traditional, you know, failure way to success narrative, just despite, you know, still having tremendous amounts of failures and fuck ups in the last, you know,
of
5 years of business. That kind of approach is kind of my ethos, if you want to think about it
yeah.
like that.
Amazing. Because when we teach real estate, I was telling you briefly before the show, and I know you chatted with Zach, that
Yeah.
we teach everybody the same skill sets, but why do people do a deal in 30 days and some take a year? It's 100% all the stuff we're talking about. And I know you're big on it.
100%.
All right. So let's go there actually for a second here as I'll try to wrap up some of my thoughts. Say you're in front of, I don't know, we've got hundreds of thousands of listeners, but say you're in front of 300 of our listeners, and they're sort of that avatar that's flocking to us now, and more so since COVID. And that is, hey, I got a W-2. I feel stuck. I'm creating someone else's wealth, and I want to go over to the real estate side of things. I'm used to really good money, but they're just stuck. They're not making the transition. Like, if you only had a few minutes with them, what would you impart on them?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I think that it, for me personally, speaking from my experience, like it's either you wait for something to happen in your life that,
Mm,
I don't know, just for lack of better words, like screws you into the dirt, similar to what happened to me, where you are left with no option to do anything but change. And this might come in the way of, I'm not sure, like you getting fired, your wife leaving you, cheating on you, like all
right.
of these terrible things that brings you and breaks you down to, like, you know, that pit of I've got to do something different. Either you wait for something of that nature to happen, or you summon the courage and you move through kind of the fear of the unknown,
Mm,
despite having, you know, a quote unquote good situation around you, and for no other reason but because it's necessary, and also to move forward more so for like the security of your family and your future and all of those other contributing factors. You seize this moment now and act. Because I guess the other part to this that I think also contributes to that is that time is such a big factor here. And I posted on my Instagram the other day this quote from Barack Obama that he said on a panel with like Stephen Bartlett from the Diary of the CEO podcast. And Barack Obama used to, when making decisions for, you know, leading the entire US
yeah.
country, which is no small feat, he used to operate on like a 51% rule, where he would get to 51% certainty, and he would fucking act, and he would decide, and he would commit, because he knew that if he tried to take the time to deliberate and research and gather all the findings, the opportunity passes you, the relevance of the information passes you, other competitors move into the space that, you know, water down your opportunity, and all of the variables change. So if I was to be telling myself that, I would be saying to myself, does it feel like 51%? And if the answer is yes, just like forego the fear, and you have to commit with something that has meaning to you. And I don't know, in the consumer driven economy we have today, generally speaking, that is a financial commitment to something bigger than what you are currently doing. And then just that, I guess, ferocity and that burning desire to really fulfill on your commitments. I think that's the two parts to it. So that's kind of, I guess, in summary, if I had a couple of minutes, what I'd say to myself, which would be somewhat equal to, these individuals as well.
I love it. No, thank you so much for that. They need more of you, obviously, that I can give them today with you. So where can the Wicked Smart listeners reach you, Sasha? You can share any and all so that they can reach you. It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, I do drop a kind of a solo podcast around about 3 times per week myself, where I just kind of go on different rants based on different things that are happening inside of my life and business that I feel may or may not be. Maybe it's just an outlet for me to express myself, but some people really seem to enjoy it.
That's good stuff.
So that's a great place. If you want to get more kind of content like that. Otherwise, my Instagram is also a great place to hang out. It's just Sasha_Karabut. I do have a YouTube channel as well. If you just search Sasha Karabut, you'll find me on there. Outside of that, yeah, those are probably the 3 best places to hear more, listen more, connect with me. Send me a DM and I can answer any other questions as well. That's probably the best platforms. Yeah.
I love it. So a lot of writer down, there's a lot of action steps in there. Sasha, so we get to this point. Here's kind of my last question. In your life, is you're so young still. What's next? And next for you could be, you could share 5 or 10 or whatever's next burning in your brain right now. What is next for you? Because you've already come so far.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that heaps. So the next intention that I have, or the way that I've kind of been thinking more intentionally about this more recently, is due to how I set my goals and vision when I was 25. So when I was 25, broke, junkie, drug addict, I started to write, my goals down, and I had no understanding of what I was doing. I read a Grant Cardone book, 10X Rule, and I was like, yeah, like maybe I'll just do that. Started doing it, didn't believe in it, had very, very, very loud mental chatter about every single thing I was writing down. Like, yeah, right, you can't do that. You're a loser, man. Like, you're never going to achieve that. On and on and on. And I kind of like was able to silence that enough to just persist with it and continue with it. And all of about maybe one of the initial vision goals, like timelines, in terms of like buy my first $1 million investment property, earn $3 million from my business, earn $10 million from my business by the age of 30. All of those things have come into fruition, and I've executed on them. And it's really amazing to see. However, one thing that I've noticed, and one thing I observed, maybe reflection, hindsight's always 20/20, was that the specificity around some things, for example, like what is the sacrifice that you would like to exchange for said earnings? What is the freedom that you would like to associate with said earnings? What is the net profit you'd like to, realize from said growth and earnings? So for me at the moment, I'm super excited about like massive targets and massive goals. I've always had this $1 billion mindset where I wanted to build something that has $1 billion potential, and taking some of these like e-commerce businesses that we currently own, exiting those ones, and then replicating that whole process, but at a massive scale, buying up, 10, 15, 20 of these assets at a time, growing them over a period of 5 years, and eventually exiting to an exchange traded fund or something of that nature. That's kind of my big $1 billion play that I'm working towards. However, the specificity around such things as profit, connection with my wife and my family, and freedom associated with that, because prior to that, everything was sacrificed towards the targets that I set, and it was just at all costs. And so realizing that now and seeing, the amazing achievements, but also the dark side of that, which is relationships that have just ruined, sometimes lack of profit because it wasn't the highest intent priority, if that makes sense. And so for me right now, it's kind of reevaluating with, 5 more years under my belt, a lot more wiser, a lot more intelligent, a lot more kind of experience, a lot more failures, a lot more good people around me, a lot more good connections, and being like, that's the target, and how can we realize this target in a much more effective, sustainable, and predictable somewhat manner, knowing that, nothing's predictable, but that's kind of the current situation for me. Yeah.
Really cool. Really cool. I hope, I know that we'll connect between you and I and Zach, and Peter will connect again and again, because I know you touched a whole bunch of people there in the Wicked Smart community, and I really appreciate it in such a short time. And congrats really on all your success. That's an understatement, really. And I couldn't wait to chat with you. Yeah. So thank you so much, buddy. Be safe. I know I'm catching you in Australia at 7-ish a.m. and I really appreciate it. And I know you're kind of fresh as a daisy right now and ready to kill the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's an absolute pleasure. And you're doing a great thing here. Really, really great to connect with your audience. And thanks so much for having me here.
Thanks, buddy. Be safe.